Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lana Levinson, and I am excited to see you here. I am an instructor of test automation with Jabuzi, and I'm also the creator of this test automation course. So today we're gonna have our class number one, and we gonna spend some time talking about test automation, the things we need in order to start building test automation, uh, current market, our test automation course, and the best part, we will also build our first automated test case. So I'm very excited to see you here. I hope you're gonna like it. Let's begin. First of all, let me begin by introducing myself. So as I mentioned, my name is Lana or Svetlana Levinson, and I am a senior software developer in test. I currently lead a small team of automation engineers, and I am responsible for building test automation of mobile applications, of web, and of the backend RESTful APIs. So it's been a lot. I have quite a lot experience in the industry, and I'm pretty familiar with majority of the modern tools for test automation. And just because I've been in the industry for a while, I understand that test automation is still a very, very required and good to have skill in quality assurance overall. Uh, there are always not enough test automation engineers to fill out all the market needs. So there are always a lot of good jobs in the market. And that's why we decided to create this course to help our students to get into those jobs and to help our students to grow professionally, expand into test automation as well. So first of all, let's start with market. Market is actually pretty good. We've done the market analysis in 2019 and in the beginning of 2020. And we've noticed that the test automation engineers pretty much have very good salaries. So if you are looking into junior role as a test automation engineer, your salary to start with will be around 50 to $60 an hour. This is pretty easy to get into. All you need to know is basics of quality assurance, plus you need to have some knowledge of test automation, of Selenium, of how to automate web, which is exactly what we will teach you during this course. You should be familiar with some concepts. You should be familiar with some Selenium methods and pretty common ways of automating certain user behaviors. But that is usually a pretty good and pretty easy level to get after our course. Besides this, if you have some experience with test automation, if you know how to solve coding challenges, you can actually get into middle level. Middle level doesn't necessarily mean you have a few years of experience in test automation. It basically means that you are familiar with most of the test automation concepts. You feel comfortable creating tests by yourself. You don't need a lot of supervision. And on middle level, we usually see a lot of full-time roles, and they will pay 120 to $140,000 per year pretty easily. In fact, you can even get more than this, but those are the middle level position. Now, if you have some years of experience in test automation, if you can build frameworks from scratch yourself, this is a whole different story. You get to the senior level, and at the senior level, you usually get a salary at around $150,000, and you can target way more than that. It is also achievable. So as you can see, salaries are pretty good. We also analyzed the market across the United States, and we noticed that there are a lot of test automation jobs. So Don't be worried if you are not in California, if you live somewhere in Chicago or, um, for example, Florida, we still see people who are getting test automation jobs there. And don't worry, these jobs will always be there because there is simply not enough automation engineers in the current market to actually fill out these roles. All right, so I hope this makes sense. Let me now move a little bit towards the components of actual test automation. And let me talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing during the course and what we will automate. And then we'll jump to the code because that's the best part. Okay, so first of all, test automation, a buzzing word. What it actually means and what do people actually do when they build test automation? Let's imagine this scenario. You work for Google. That is a good beginning. And when working for Google, you very often need to test the same functionality. So for example, you would like to open google.com web page, input something in the search field. I'm going to go for dress as always. Hit enter. And then you need to verify that on this page, user will see the dresses, right? So if you're a manual QA engineer, it is a bit annoying to actually keep on repeating this test case over and over again. Moreover, you as a human can actually make an error. You can forget to execute this test case. You can forget to check something. So that's when test automation usually comes into place. When we have a lot of test cases that are repetitive, that we repeat again and again, this is a very clear indication that we actually need to automate that. So test automation will do the same exact thing as our user. It will open the website for us, in this case, google.com. It will then tap on this field, input something into this field, whatever we tell it to input. It will simulate hitting enter on user's keyboard, and then it will verify what user sees on this particular page, right? So things like this, we can easily automate. Now, how to do it? What do we need? What components actually are must have for test automation? First of all, you obviously need to have a browser, right? So today we're going to play around with Google Chrome browser, but test automation can be done on multiple browsers. You can have the same scripts running on Google Chrome, on Safari, on Firefox, on Edge, and so on. But today, just for demo purposes, I'm going to use Google Chrome browser. So if you're going to follow my example, download Google Chrome browser unless you have it already. So we have the browser. Very cool. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we actually need a way to control this browser. So we're going to be using our code and we're going to write code in Python. So in order to install Python, you can just simply Google Python and go to python.org. So I'm just going to click here. And this will take you to the official web page of Python programming language. And this is the language that we will use during our course. You can go to downloads, and then you can download the version of Python that you see here. 3.8.2 is actually a good version. If you are watching this video and see a version that is newer than this, that's totally fine. Download that, just download the latest version. So for us and for our course, anything above 3.6, like 3.6 and above, any version will work. So anything above 3.6 is good. All right, now let's say you downloaded Python. You follow the instructions, install it on your machine, and how to actually work with browser and how to actually automate it. Well, first of all, we need to create the project. And in order to create test automation project, we will need another piece of software, which is PyCharm. So PyCharm, you can just look it up, is our IDE. This is basically where we're gonna write our code, and this is the environment where we're gonna launch our tests. So it is very convenient and very easy to actually execute our code. So you can go to official PyCharm website, and then you just need to download it. Quick comment over here, when downloading PyCharm, I'm gonna click on this button. I would recommend you to download Professional Edition. So Professional Edition is free for a month, for 30 days. And during the 30 days, you can actually use it, and you can utilize it to work with some of the test automation frameworks such as Behave. And these frameworks are not supported by Community Edition. So that's why we actually are going to be using professional one. So if you want to build the same test case I'll be showing you or building today, just download professional one and install it on your machine. I already have it installed. I don't need to install it myself, but if you don't, just follow the instructions. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now the last thing, in order to work with browsers, in order to build test automation, we obviously need the code with our test case, the code that we will be using and defining the behavior of our test. We obviously need something where we're going to be writing this code. So PyCharm it is. Now we also need a way to connect to our browser, right? So we have Google Chrome. That's good. We have browser installed. But now we also need a way to actually connect to that browser from our code and execute a certain test automation script. So in order to do this connection, we need one more thing. We need a driver for our Chrome browser. So you can just open Google and you can look for Chrome driver. When you look for Chrome driver, the top page that I get says chromedriver.chromium.org. And this is the official website for our driver. So you can click here, and you need to download the Chrome driver that is compatible with version of your Chrome, right? So be very careful here. You can go to your Chrome browser, about Google Chrome, and under this, you will see the version of the Chrome browser that you have on your machine. I'm currently having the version number 81 installed. So therefore, I need a driver that will work with this version. And the driver that I'm going to download is this Chrome driver 81.0. This is the one for me. So I'm just clicking here, and I'm downloading the driver that I need. In my case, it is the driver for Mac. So those are all the components, and those are all the things that we will need to have in place before we start automating. Now, let me say a few more words about the actual framework. So we will be working with Selenium. We will be teaching you guys how to write test automation with Selenium. We're not going to be looking at any other tools. We're not going to be looking at Jasmine, Cypress.io, or whatever. All we're going to be using is just Selenium, which is the most popular tool right now in the market. And moreover, Selenium and Selenium WebDriver is actually something that is recommended to have for all the modern browsers. So when, let's say, developers of Google Chrome build their browser, it is recommended for them to actually have Chrome driver in place and have that driver be able to execute Selenium commands. So because Selenium is so deep to the point where it actually is touching the standards for creating web browsers, Selenium is a very solid tool, and it is very, very possible that Selenium is not going to disappear from the current market of test automation tools for a while. Selenium's been there for quite a few years, and I would expect that this tool will only grow, and the amount of people who are using Selenium will just continue to grow and taking over the market. So Selenium is definitely uh, it's definitely the best framework to actually learn if you want to start as a test automation engineer. It's definitely the most popular tool. So what can Selenium do? Selenium automates browsers. That's it. That's the main idea I would like you to remember. Selenium cannot connect to the database. Selenium cannot do some things like performing API calls. Everything that Selenium can do is just automate browsers. That's the whole idea. So Selenium is a tool that you will be using in order to build your test automation. So we gonna use Python, and we're gonna use Selenium library for Python in order to create our test automation. But a cool thing to remember is that Selenium actually supports multiple programming languages. So if eventually you will decide to switch to Java or Ruby or something else, even JavaScript, for example, all these languages actually have their own versions of Selenium. So if you learn basic Selenium commands on one language, they are the same for another language. So if you are an experienced test automation engineer, it is pretty easy for you to actually switch from one language to another, simply because Selenium is the same. So all Selenium commands are going to be very similar in different programming languages, which is another cool benefit of using Selenium. Okay, so let's begin. I have everything already downloaded and installed in place. And I'm gonna start simply by creating a new project. So I have my PyCharm open. Um, you can see that I have a lot of projects. If you just installed it, this site's probably gonna be empty for you. But what we need to do here is just create a new project. Let's do this. So I'm gonna click Create New Project button. And here you can pick the location and you can pick project interpreter. So for location, I'm gonna call my folder, let's say test automation intro. Oops. Okay, and project interpreter, I just clicked on this arrow. Here is where we can select the environment that we will be using for our Python, right? I actually have Python 3.6 installed on my machine. So I'm gonna go with existing interpreter Python version 3.6. You can also create a new environment if you'd like to, but just select the base interpreter and create the environment from there. I'm gonna go with an easier option. I'm just gonna go with existing interpreter. Just FYI, it doesn't really matter which one you select here. For us, for building and learning basics of test automation, the both options are good. So I'm going with existing interpreter, and I'm gonna hit create button. Okay. Here we go. So PyCharm creates my project, and that's basically it. Right now, all I have here is a pretty empty folder, and inside this folder is nothing there. And here I can start simply by creating my test. So few things that I would like to mention. Everything that I will be working on today, we actually have already created for you guys, and it is actually available on the GitHub. So what you can also do is you can go to GitHub and you can download existing code that I have created. So if you are lost, if you don't want to create something from scratch, you can just go there and utilize my code in order to just run the tests and play a little bit with that. That project is called Test Automation Python, and it is in our materials in our presentation. Well, but for now, let's go back to our project. And let's look at the settings. So I have a very empty project here. I'm going to go to Preferences, Project, and I'm clicking Project Interpreter. So this will tell me basically all the packages that I have installed for my Python. You can see that I already have Selenium. What you will need in order to create a project from scratch, you will need to add Selenium yourself. You can click on this plus button, search for Selenium, and just click install package. This will install the package for you. So if you are creating the project from scratch, don't forget to do that before creating your first test automation scenario. Now, as I mentioned, the second thing that I need to have in order to automate, besides the actual code base, is the way to connect to my browser. And as I mentioned earlier, I have already downloaded my Chrome driver. So let me open my downloads folder and find the Chrome driver. It's right here. I just take this and I'm moving my Chrome driver into my current project. Let's wait. And okay. And now you can see that it is actually right here, right? So all I have right now here is just Chrome driver and an empty folder. So now I'm just going to do the right click here. And I'm going to create a new Python file. So I'm going to call it sample script. Say okay. All right. So what I have now, one driver, the file for the driver, and the sample script, which is an empty Python script that we will now try to fill out with code. So first of all, when building test automation, I need to work with WebDriver, with the Chrome driver, right? So the first thing that I need to do is import my WebDriver. From Selenium, import WebDriver. That's it. Now I would like to initialize the driver, so I would like to actually connect to my Google Chrome browser. I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it driver. And inside that variable, I'm going to put the instance of Chrome. So driver equals webdriver.chrome. And in order to control my Chrome driver. I need to tell what file to use in order to connect to it. So I need to point to this Chrome driver here. So I enter executable path, and here I need to put the path for this particular file. How do I do this? Right click, copy path. That's it. And let's paste it over here. So that is basically it. That will connect to our Chrome, ideally, if everything is working properly, and just create a clear instance of our browser. Let's run it, because who knows? Okay, this is interesting. So if you see something like this, let's go here, and I'm going to go to security and privacy. General. So make sure that you are not seeing something like this in here. If you see this, Chrome driver was blocked from use because it's not from an identified developer, you can just click here, allow anyway, and this will allow your Mac machine to utilize Chrome driver. I bet Windows users will not have such an issue, but let's try one more time. Okay. And as you can see, this actually worked. And this just opened a clear instance of the driver. I'm sorry, a clear instance of the browser for me. So I can actually connect to my browser. If you have these two lines and upon launching them, nothing works, like you don't see the behavior that I'm seeing right now, it means that something isn't working properly. So make sure that when you run these two lines, it actually opens the clear instance of your browser, right? And I run it simply by doing the right click on my code and selecting run option right here. Also, you can do the right click here, run sample script. That will do the trick as well. Okay, so we just learned how to actually connect to our Chrome browser. Very cool. Now, what we actually would like to automate. We would like to automate user behavior. So as I mentioned earlier, let's go to Google and try to understand what we would like to do. First of all, user needs to open a web page, right? In our case, it's google.com. So I'm gonna click here and I'm gonna hit Command C in order to copy this. I'm copying the page. And now I would like to tell my driver to actually open a web page for me. Oops. So in order to open a web page, you need to enter command driver.get and pass the URL to the web page. I'm going to put a comment, open a page. Be careful here. When you are copying the website, it should start with HTTP or HTTPS. If you're just copy something like this, www.google.com, it's not going to work. If you don't believe me, you can try it yourself. But for now, I'm just going to put the right URL in here, and that should open our page. Now, the next thing that we need to do when we open google.com, as I mentioned earlier, we would like to simulate some user behavior. So we would like our user to actually input something into the search field, and then we would like to verify that we can find something after the search, right? So how can we do it? In order to interact with elements on the web page, you actually need to know how to locate these elements, and you need to tell to your test automation which element you would like to interact with. So let me expand this. I'm going to go do right click on the web page, and I'm selecting inspect option. So again, right click, inspect. So this will open this menu for me. I will also need a console. So I'm going to click console right here. And if I'm doing this, you can see that I can no longer see the elements, right? So in order to actually see console under the elements, I'm just going to select these three dots and pick option show console drawer. And this will open the console over here at the bottom, which is super convenient and something that I'm going to be using in a second. All right, let's continue. So first of all, I need to interact with this particular field. How can I find it, and how can I find its location? In order to do it, I can click on this arrow right here and hover over the element that I would like to interact with, which is this input field. Cool. All right, now let's look at actual element. So Google Chrome Developer Tools highlight the element for us, so we can actually read through this element and try to understand how we can actually interact with this. So there are multiple ways to interact with a certain element on the page. There are things like XPath, CSS selectors, names, IDs, and so on. We will cover them during the course, but for now, I'm going to go with name. So name equals Q is the attribute that is appropriate for this particular element. So I'm going to use that in my test automation in order to connect to this element. So I'm back to my code. And what I need to tell my driver is, hey, driver, first of all, find element. I want it to find element by name. And the name of this element is Q. So you can see that it actually is highlighting by, because by is not imported. So what you can do here is actually import this particular package. So it is actually explaining you exactly, like PyCharm is helping you, it's explaining you exactly what is not important. So you can just select this option, import Selenium WebDriver common by, right? And when I click there PyCharm is importing the missing module for me. So now it can actually use by in order to find elements. Cool. So now here is the thing. If I just open the web page and then I try to find element right away, it is very possible that it's not going to work, simply because the web page is loading, too slow sometimes. And in order to avoid such an issue, you actually would like to wait for an element some time until it appears. So I'm going to implement implicit wait in this case, and I'm just going to wait for, let's say, 4 seconds maximum in order to find an element. If it finds element before this time, it's going to start working with that before, but it's going to wait up to 4 seconds. We're going to spend some time during the course talking about wait. It's a whole lesson actually devoted to that. So don't worry, this is a pretty complicated topic in Selenium, but we definitely are going to cover that. So now I would like to put something into my input field. I found my input field. It's this element by name Q, but I would like to actually send some text into this. So how can I do it? Let's create a variable. Let's call this search field. And let's store our web element into this variable search field. And now in order to send some text, in order to type some text into our search field in here, what we can do is simply use a Selenium command, send keys. And in here, we can, first of all, input the text that we would like to input into this field. So I'm going to go for dress, and I'm going to do dress here. Just don't forget the quotation marks around it. And then I would also like to simulate user hitting enter button on the keyboard. So I'm going to use keys, enter. You can see that keys is highlighted in red for us. So when I'm clicking on it, PyCharm is going to help me one more time and recommends me to import this module. I'm going to click on this line. And you can see that here we got another import line from Selenium, WebDriver, common keys, import keys. So keys is a module that is responsible for keyboard, and it simulates interaction with users' keyboard. So this line will input the word dress and will try to hit enter on user's keyboard, basically. All right, very cool. So let's actually try to run it and let's see what's going to happen for now before we move on to the next part. Okay, we open the page, enters dress, it searches. Seems like everything worked. Very cool. So now let's continue. We obviously are responsible for building a test case. So when you test something, you would like to do some actions, yes. So we input dress, it opens a new page. But what we must have in every test is some sort of a verification at the end. Some sort of a check that this test case has successfully finished. So let's actually, on this new page, let's make sure that we actually see the results for dresses. So I'm going to go for this line of text, and I'm actually going to verify that this line of text has the word dress in it, right? So that will actually make sure that we have the new page open with the proper results. So I'm going to use this arrow and I'm going to hover over this element. And this is what I see right here. So you can see that this element obviously doesn't have any name. It is a little bit harder to actually link to this. So we can actually go a bit higher to go to the higher level and see maybe we can actually link to this element using some of the page structure, some of the page element. So I can see this element h3, which is obviously a header, and I'm going to try to use it in order to link to this web element. So I can do this by using what we call XPath. In order to test your website, to test your XPath, you enter $ and X in the console, and then inside the braces, you enter the XPath that you would like to implement in order to find a certain element. So XPath will reflect the way we see the element on the page, and it will follow the structure that you put in here. So first of all, I would like to link to H3, which is header, right? So if I just search for headers, you can see that there are 13 headers on the web page. The top one is definitely the one that I'm looking for. So I'm gonna start my XPath by inputting H3. And now inside this H3 element, I'm looking for a link, right, which is A, and inside A, there is a span. So I'm gonna go for this structure for now, and I'm just gonna hit enter. So you can see that if I just follow the structure, this is what I actually have. It finds this particular span with the actual text that we are looking for. This XPath will work, but what you can also do is try to get rid of this A in the middle, because in case somebody is not turning it into the link anymore and the structure of the page changes, it would be easier to just avoid extra element in the beginning and just to link to header that has span inside. So I can also simplify this a little bit simply by inputting this kind of XPath. All right, so this XPath seemed to work. It actually seems to find our element. Like I'm clicking on it, I'm hovering over, and the Google Chrome browser highlights me the right XPath, which is good. So we can actually use it in order to verify the text. So let's say, let's name it search result header. And we need to tell our driver to find an element by the XPath that we just found. And inside that element, take its text, right? So the header will contain C dresses text. And now we would like to make sure that our query, that our search word is actually inside that. So I'm going to add assertion, assert, and look for the word dress inside my search result header. And in case there is an error, in case that word is not there, we can just output some sort of error for our users saying like incorrect header. And we can also put the header here. I did this. Okay, so this is our assertion. So this is the step where we verify header, where we verify that we can see dress in on this page. This is very important because you can obviously see that if our test case is not working properly, this header is simply not here. So if for some reason the search didn't work, because this header isn't here, our test case would fail, right? But if everything is fine, the new page should open. This header should appear, and our test in this particular case, it should pass. So let's try to do it. Let's try to run our script that we have created so far and see if we have any issues. All right, let's do this. So I'm gonna do the right click and I'm gonna take run sample script and let's see what's gonna happen. Okay, so it stopped, our browser finished. And if we go back to our PyCharm, we notice that it says process finished with exit code 0, which is success. So there are obviously no issues. All right, sounds very good. But how can we make sure that this test case is actually accurate? What if this test case is actually not correct? So a good practice when building test automation is actually to try breaking your tests before you actually verify that you build everything and before you actually store your code somewhere. So let's break our test and let's make sure that the test case fails in case we are actually doing some other checks. So in here in assertion, I'm gonna input something different. Let's say dress 1s in search result header. So I'm just gonna break my assertion statement and I would expect my test case to fail. So let's do this. We run our test case. And when we get back here, we can see that our assertion error actually appeared, the error that I've just input right here. It says incorrect header, right? See dresses, because we now are expecting this text to be inside our header. It actually failed. So let's fix it. Let's put it back to what it was, because obviously our assertion works as expected. And obviously the test case is actually correct and is passing and failing when expected. So now the last thing that I'd like to do here is get rid of all these browsers. You know, they're super annoying. So let's close our browser every time we finish executing our test case. Driver quit. So first of all, I'm going to manually close the instances that I have open so far. And now what I would expect to happen is a fresh instance to open, execute my test case, and close itself. Let's do it. So I'm just going to hit play. And that's it, right? So we've just created our first test case. It is obviously super simple. We are not using any specific testing frameworks. All we are doing here is just creating a Python script and telling our browser what to do. So again, at first, we are creating the instance of our browser. I'm using Google Chrome. We are opening the web page. We then searching for our input field. Then inside our input field, we input the word dress, and we input the enter key. So basically, we simulate the behavior of using hidden enter on the user's keyboard. And then on the next page that opens, we are looking for the header. And we are verifying that we see dress in the header. So it means the page has opened and the page actually has correct results, which is what we need to do. And at the end, we are closing the driver. That's it. I hope it was simple enough. So we just created our first test case. Of course, there are a few topics that I've mentioned that we are going to spend time talking a little bit more during the actual course. But if you manage to actually repeat at least this and have it working, congratulations, because that is a very, very good beginning. Cool. So now let me walk you through Behave, and let me walk you through a framework that we will be working with during our test automation course, so you have some idea. So when we are going to be building test automation during our classes, first of all, we will try to practice. We will also create a few scripts, and we will try to learn Selenium WebDriver and Selenium commands. But at the same time, you obviously understand that if you just have one script with one test case, that's pretty easy to maintain, and that's not very hard, right, to manage. But if you have hundreds or even thousands of test cases, the maintenance turns into something pretty much impossible to do, because imagine for each test case you create, you have to rewrite this part, then you have to rewrite some sort of this statements to close the sessions and so on, right? So what we are going to be learning during our course is actually a framework and the way to build our test cases and build our test automation in a way where our code is very reusable and our code is super easy to maintain. So we're going to work with Behave, and I have one example here. So Behave is a framework that allows us to define behavior first, and then to code steps for the behavior that we have defined. So we will be creating test cases in this format where we have feature, for example, test scenarios for search, and then we will be describing the actual behavior of the user in different steps. So at first, our user will open Google page, then user will input address, then user will click on search icon or hit enter keyboard on the tab. That's another option. And then user sees proper product results, and first result contains the word dress. So in this example, I have a bit more complex assertions at the end, but it's the same idea, right? So we will be working with Behave, and we will be writing our test automation in the format of Behave scenarios. And then for each step of our test automation, we will also be creating steps. So for example, open Google page will be this. So we will create step where we're gonna call driver and ask driver to execute a certain command. So the framework that we will be learning during the course will be a bit more complex and will look similar to the framework that people usually build when they work for larger companies, when they try to build something scalable. Also, I will walk you through page object model. If you are familiar at least a little bit with test automation, you probably heard a lot about it. So we will be creating classes for our pages, and we will make sure that proper classes have proper methods, and we are using steps from Behave to call these methods from a particular class. So when actually building test automation during the course, we will follow the best practices of building the framework from scratch. So in case you ever need to build your own framework in a company, you can actually go there and follow our lessons and just build everything from scratch yourself. So again, those are the things that we will cover during our course, and I hope they will be interesting. Anyway, if you are not familiar with Behave, if you don't know what it is, you can also look it up. It's called behavior-driven development, and it's actually one of the most popular trends in modern test automation. So that is a good thing to know for a test automation engineer anyway. All right, cool. So congrats with creating your first script. Let me go back to the presentation. There we go. All right. So as I mentioned today, we will be, during the course, we will be learning the most common, the most popular concepts of modern test automation. We will learn Selenium WebDriver very well. We will learn how to do multiple actions, how to open one page, two pages, input things into fields, how to wait properly for certain conditions, and so on. We will be using Python for during our course as our programming language. So it is a pretty easy language to learn. It's one of the best languages to actually start learning coding from. So before the course, we would expect that you will go through at least some basic lessons for Python and you are familiar. We will not be learning Python from scratch during our course. So we do expect that people who join actually have at least some basic coding skills. Keep this in mind because if you don't know Python at all, or if you don't know any programming language at all, it will be hard for you to catch up. So you need to have some basics in order to join the course. We will learn page object pattern, as I mentioned. That's the way to actually organize your framework. We will learn BDD, which is behavior driven development, and the way to define our test cases in human language first, and then turn them into the actual code. We will also learn Git. In fact, everybody who joins our test automation course also gets our free classes, free mini course for Git and how to work with Git commands. During the course, you will be submitting your homeworks over GitHub. So you will also get familiar with the code repository and you will learn how to use them as well. And also during the course, we will cover technical interview questions and especially algorithms. So unfortunately, in the modern market, we see that a lot of companies are still asking people for algorithms. They ask people to solve coding challenges. And also, most of these things we will never need in life of a test automation engineer. Uh, we will still teach you how to solve coding challenges and we will go over the most common interview algorithms so you are able to actually get a job and you are more prepared for your interview. And those are mostly main things. If you have any questions, please also refer to the materials that I have here. I posted the GitHub, posted the code that I went over today in the GitHub repo. So you can actually download the project and try to execute things yourself. If for some reason coding after me didn't work out for you, you can just look at the GitHub for the project. Also, we have a Python preparation course. So feel free to jump there and use our Python in order to get ready for test automation. And also I attached some links to the things that I showed today during the presentation, where download them, where to find them. So feel free to look and go over these materials. They will be super helpful. Also, if you are interested in our test automation course overall, you can always go to our website, which is jobeasy.co this time, and you can go to QA automation. And under our QA automation page, you can find the link with information about the actual course, with the detailed explanation of who's teaching it, what we're going to cover, what are the prices, what you are going to learn. We have quite a lot of lessons over here, so feel free to also look around, and I'll see you during the course. I look forward to actually seeing you guys, and I hope you're going to join so we can have fun building test automation together. Test automation is not rocket science. I've just showed you today how to build a test case, and I've spent probably less than half an hour to actually build the first test case with a bunch of explanations around it. And you can see that it's just a few lines of code, right? So it's not that hard. And I know many people are afraid to join test automation because they think, oh no, coding, it's super hard. It's a rocket science. I will never learn it. But don't be afraid, right? Test automation is actually easy, and it is actually fun to build things and to watch them running. So I'll see everyone during the course, hopefully. I hope you guys liked today's lesson. And also, actually, to whoever's joining our test automation course, we also have added the link in our materials for our introduction to API testing. So maybe if you are not so interested in test automation, but interested in actually learning more about APIs and API testing, uh, feel free to watch another free class from us regarding API tests as well. Well, anyway, thank you everyone. Thank you for your time. I hope you guys like the session and see you later. Bye-bye.